last week, we talked a little bit about the idea that that divinity lives within us, that each of us is a living expression of it, that it has not just created us, but become us and all that we are. And so we're going to keep stretching this idea, right? Because for some folks, like, this is the first time they've ever encountered these ideas. And for other folks, they've been thinking about these ideas for so long that it can be really easy to lose track of, like, the simplicity of what is right in front of us, right? And so first we have to accept that as part of this teaching, we're just kind of chasing rabbits down holes. Like, that's literally what we do in this teaching. It comes out of religious science. And the reason that I believe Dr. Holmes, the founder of that teaching, called it religious science is because there's a religiosity and spirituality and theology to it and a philosophy, but there is also a practice and a practicality and an exploration and a finding of things and a discovering of things, and then an application of what is found, an application of what is experienced and what is shared. And so when we think about this idea that God is all there is, sometimes we have to break down this idea that all there is all I encounter, right? Like, sometimes we think all that there is whatever my brain can, like, imagine in my mind's eye, that's it, right? And so it tends to get relegated to places and people and things and stuff, right? And for some folks who come out of that traditional faith belief, which has been indoctrinated into all of us here in the United States, of that idea that there's something out there, or some guy or some dad or someone or some deity or whatever it might be, that is even it, we've given it some kind of imagery in our mind to imagine that concept as a thing. And so in Oneness New Thought, breaking all of that down and being open to a new idea, a new thought about this concept of God and spirituality means that we kind of have to expand beyond the tangible stuff that we can touch and feel and taste and see and hear and smell, and move into the more, I don't want to say intellectualized, because it's important for us to use our intellect, but it's not really about our intellect. It's about this awareness that there is a complexity in the universe that is, in all of its infinite nature, absolutely operating under divine order. And what does that look like? What does it mean to think that there is this vast universe and that it's operating in divine order, especially when we in our minds look around and see a lot of chaos? Anybody see any chaos in the last couple of weeks? Anywhere? Huh? Anybody? Just me? Okay, all right. But that chaos, that experience of chaos, is really just an inability to understand the larger systems or the larger experiences or larger impacts and causes and repercussions and the complexity of life itself. And so what we understand is that what appears to be chaos to some will appear to be harmony to others. And how do we know that? Well, when we look at the science aspect of things, it's funny. This morning, today, I was watching an episode from the second season of Cosmos. If you're not familiar with it, or actually it's the third season technically, because the first one was Carl Sagan. And then you have Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's taken it up and kind of advanced it forward since then. And as I was watching this magnificent articulation of the voyage of humanity, this penchant that we have to always peer out into the horizon of what we don't understand or know, and have this inner call and desire to go chase it, to find it out, right? And so in this episode, he was likening traveling the cosmos to what it was like for the first human explorers to ever set sail in the sea, right? And that there's this grand and vast expanse of ocean in front of these humans, and that they can't see beyond the horizons, but they watch the birds, they watch the stars, they watch and pay attention to the wind, They watch and pay attention to the tide and to the fish and to every aspect of the environment around them. And over time, begin to discover patterns and consistency and the ability to then take that understanding of how those systems are working and apply it in a way that drives them toward their vision. And that's what this teaching is really about. Oneness New Thought is about recognizing all of these systems that are operating all around us, all over the place, observing them, and then practicing. And I talked about that earlier this month. Observing them and then practicing what we can in order to will them to go to the places that we want, in order to seek out, now this is very important, not to discover that things are what we thought they were, but to discover what things truly are. Do you see the difference? You know, when we cultivate a vision, cultivating that vision, whether we're cultivating a vision for our life, whether we're cultivating a vision for an institution, whether we're cultivating a vision for a society, the cultivation of that vision is at best a hypothesis of what the best outcome, what the highest good, the most good that could come from it might be. At best, a wild hypothesis, right? But why is it important to have that vision? If we're not going to pursue the vision to get exactly what it is that we thought we wanted, and knowing that up front that when we pursue a vision, we're not pursuing something that we know the outcome of. When we pursue a vision, we're pursuing the discovery of what that vision has inspired us to explore. And it invites us to explore within ourselves, and it invites us to explore the world around us. And if we're doing it in love and compassion, we're exploring each other. How important is that? And so what's crazy about it is that, you know, as humanity started to check out and notice and observe all of these different systems, humanity began to build systems. Humanity, you know, all of those people that got on those boats, and those first boats that were exploring the South Pacific, those boats didn't have any metallurgy involved. Not a nail, not a screw, none of it. So they figured out how to tie everything together to be able to cross the ocean for miles and miles and miles, right? You know, obviously nowadays it's like you could hop on a plane and go the same distance in a matter of minutes or hours, and you don't even question the insane number of systems that are operating in that process, right? The power of aerodynamics, the inertia of force, the gravitational pull and impact. And those are just natural forces. How about the fuel lines that are running through the plane, the aerodynamics of the plane itself, the talent and skill that the pilot had to cultivate about all of those systems and that machinery in order to get that big piece of metal full of people. Think about that. Every time you look in the sky, that is a big metal box of people, right? And the idea that all of that is occurring and is happening is really kind of can be overwhelming when we think that every system around us is operating with the same kind of depth of intense and absolutely unstoppable complexity, right? And so when we look at where we're at, and when I say we, I tend to talk about humanity as a whole, but sometimes I'm talking about very specific groups. And so, you know, lately I've been talking about my American family because there's been a lot going on here, if you guys haven't noticed. And I was talking with my wife, Kimberly, last night. You gave that awesome prayer and meditation. And we were talking about this idea of what it's going to be like to emerge from this era of the pandemic and how that's going to affect our society and its systems and the way it operates. And there are those who cling to what has been lost from the way that we've always done things. And then there are those who seek to find the goodness that we have discovered in this process of figuring out a new way of living and being together in this society. And what I can tell you is that if God is all there is, then God was those old systems and God is these new systems, and that God will be the systems that we create in the future for our society to operate and thrive upon. And we know that because when we look back at the Earth's history, what we see is that systems have been navigating each other, finding equilibrium with one another, and engaging with each other throughout the history of the existence of the rock that we stand on, right? Stardust spit out into space, pushed together by gravity, formed and beat down by rocks and volcanoes, and then suddenly moving into this luscious, brilliant blue dot that we're sitting on right now. All of that has happened through these divine systems, this divine order of what seemingly is chaos, of what seems to be complete disorder and disarray. And yet, here we are in the midst of all of that, 93 million miles from the sun. Do you know that when you look at the sun, you are seeing what the sun was 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago? That from the planet Earth, it takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds for the light of the sun to reach our eyeballs here on Earth, which means that when we look out at the sun, if you wake up every morning and look at the sun, you're looking into the past 8 minutes and 20 seconds. That's how expansive the future is, and that's how elusive the present moment can be. And so when we try to manage time and when we try to manage space, we get frustrated. Has anybody been frustrated managing their time and space over the last year? Right? And so we don't want to get trapped managing time and space, because time and space exist in a system of divinity that is assured, that is universal, that affects everyone exactly the same and isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And so for us to try and manage it would be like a drop of water in the ocean trying to tell the tide where it needs to go and how it needs to get there. And so the first part of figuring out how to really empower yourself within a system is to begin studying that system and playing with that system and exploring that system. And that's what Oneness New Thought is a system for spiritual living. And I know for some people, they don't like the word religion. And to you, I would say, let's have a chat about that. Because a system for spiritual living is just another way to say religion, right? When you get specific about your spiritual practice and allow that not to become rigid, but to become accessible, identifiable, a system of accountability, a system of responsibility, and a system of practice, it becomes religion. But however you look at it, what Oneness New Thought brings to the table is a system of control measures to help us dibble-dabble and start to figure out what the stars are saying to us from the sky, what the tides are saying to us from the ocean, what the winds are saying to us, what the migrant patterns of the birds are revealing to us, what the systems all around us are attempting to bring us into. And sometimes for us, that looks like chaos. And so next week, I'm going to be talking about the ethereal aspects of God, the things that you can't touch, the things that you can't taste, the things that you can't quantify in physical and empirical terms. But before we get there, we don't want to think that that place that is ethereal, that place that is in thought and feeling and experience, that place is happening outside of the place where we have divine order and where we have all of these systems and all of these people and all these places and all of these things that we believe are one thing. If we truly believe that they are one thing, then there is no natural and supernatural. There is only nature, the nature of God, right? There is no real and alternate real. There is just reality, right? And when we embrace that, when we move into that, when we invite that into our lives, it helps us love ourselves and the people around us with a greater sense of purpose. And who's not looking for purpose, right? And for some people, they think that our purpose has been defined for us before we got here. And for myself and others, we believe that our purpose is what we make of it, that we create purpose in our lives. But regardless about your idea or sense of the origin of purpose, what we recognize is that all around us, everything is serving some purpose to itself and to the world around us by being a part of systems that are operating on divine law. And so God is the divine law that has set all of the systems in place, that not managing them, but being them. There is no God as the experience of gravity, because God is gravity, right? God is love. God is peace and beauty and joy and truth and life and light. When we step into that awareness and we own it and we practice it when we're vulnerable, when we're scared, when we're not sure. Just like, and this is such a perfect example. So I've got my daughter, Mackenzie, and we took her last year to Disney World. Not last year, but the year before. Before the pandemic, we went to Disney World. And we took her on her first really, really intense roller coaster while we were there. And what I realized, and now, so mind you, it takes us forever to get her on it. Getting on it is the scariest process ever. Do you know we rode that thing 5 times before we left that park? 5 times. Because she kept saying, oh yeah, let's go again. And then we'd be like, what do you want to do next? She'd be like, well, we should go do that roller coaster again, right? But in order to enjoy that, there is the faith that goes into the systems and the ones who built it first. In order for us to enjoy that ride, in order for us to sit down and get locked in and be completely and utterly subject to whatever has been set in place by the systems that were built by the humans who said, boy, wouldn't it be cool if the roller coaster did this and if it did that, and the metallurgists who said, boy, wouldn't it be great if we went away from wood and all the crazy things we could do if we built rides out of metal. And like, just think about the complex depth of systems that have to come together just to bring a roller coaster into being, and then the depth of faith that we have to place in those things. That vast, insane thing, all the way from the inception of the physics that absolutely govern how it operates, all the way down to the very last screw and bolt that was tightened by a human hand in order to create that experience. And so when we place faith in it, the more of us that do and find out that it's awesome and begin to ride it, the more other people begin to find themselves placing faith in those systems. And now is the time, right now, for humanity to begin placing faith in each other and the systems that we're creating, not because we just blindly accept them, but because we are critical, because we review them, because we listen to how they impact and affect others, and we take that feedback knowing that we have faith to be able to transcend those issues and to create an even more perfect system in order to be able to bring about a greater sense of peace and beauty and joy and truth and love and life and light in our life and in the lives of others. And so this week, I'm going to invite you to seek out some kind of system to contemplate in meditation. Some kind of system in your life. And trust me, if you take 5 seconds, you're going to find some, right? And I'm going to throw out some examples now so you have some idea. Maybe contemplate the migration pattern of sharks. Maybe contemplate the movement of electricity from the corner, where the hub is, all the way through the ground and into and throughout your house. When we meditate on these kinds of things, we're not answering questions about how they work or figuring out how they work. We are observing the way that our mind is experiencing those systems and opening our thoughts up to inviting the idea that there is something even greater than what we were aware of a moment ago. And when we do that, we create better systems. When we do that, we invite each other to provide their perspective to each other so that our systems benefit from each other's wisdom, each other's practical experience, each other's inspirations, each other's brilliance and intelligence. And so this week, I invite you to spend your time meditating on some systems in your life or in the world around you, and contemplating how those systems are connected to the divine and how they are, in fact, an expression of God itself. How is that electricity divine? How is that gravity divine? How is the delivery service of the package that you ordered online divine? All these infinite systems that have come together to create our experience today, we live in them. And God lives in all of it. And when we know that, we begin to place faith in those systems so that when they're challenged or when they need to evolve or when they need to change, that rather than being afraid of it, we invite it, knowing that only a greater good is being pursued. And that's the truth of Oneness New Thought and the way we apply it to our lives. That when we're faithful about the systems of the divine law of the cosmos, that we can place our faith in these principles of peace and beauty and joy and truth and love and life and light, that we can practice these things like reflection and meditation and envisioning and community and generosity and study. And that when we do that, that whatever is revealed is good and whatever transformation is occurring is divine. Because we've leaned into the systems of thought, into the systems of feeling, into the systems of spirituality that God has already built and placed in front of us as the order upon which our life is operating. So go on out there this week and trip yourself out. Pick a weird thing, a weird idea, and just spend a few minutes silently contemplating nothing but that system. And as you do so, when we come back together next week, we'll talk about the spaces that live in between all of it. And so I invite you to please join me in this affirmative prayer. Because what I know in this idea of oneness is that just everything is one thing. So I recognize absolute, unceasing, universal unity, oneness, that all of it is one thing. And that the ideas of division and unity are human ideas. And so in the mind of God, which is every mind that has ever thought and every thinker that has ever lived and everything in existence beyond that lives in thought, has been occurring all at the same time in the one presence that God is, and its goodness is always evolving toward a greater measure of its own good. And so what I know is that I'm one with it, that it has created ecosystems and biological systems, that it has created solar systems, that it has created circulatory and respiratory systems, that it has created migration patterns and seasons and everything that it takes to have the brilliance that is the world around us. And we are one with all of it. We live in it. And the very thing that has created those systems has created us, because in creating them, it has become all of it. And so what I know is that in this moment, I am operating on a divine love that is pervading every area of my life, revealing greater measures of compassion, revealing greater measures of intelligence, revealing greater measures of a willingness and a capacity to bring healing about, not through dominating others, but through knowing each other. And so we make ourselves vulnerable to be known, and we invite others to know us, and we take interest in others and seek to know and understand them. And in so doing, we are partaking in the system of society and, of course, the spiritual practice of community. And I know that everything that we endeavor to do with that in mind is good, and that more and more goodness comes from it. And so I just give thanks. I'm grateful for everyone who's joined us in this community. I'm grateful for everyone that we will join in community in the future. I'm grateful for the asynchronous capacity for us to be here live together, or to be at some other day and time still enjoying each other's unified sense of consciousness, these systems that connect us and bring us together at different spaces at different times, and still unifying us in this awareness. I'm grateful for all of it, and I'm so grateful for it that I lean into it with faith. I know that it cares for me, that the community of Oneness New Thought cares for me as I engage with it. And so there is a community of care that is desperately seeking to care for us, because we are a community of caretakers. And so in that goodness and in all the blessings that come from choosing consciously to be a part of something like that, we absolutely surrender to the systems that go beyond us, the ones that have brought us together, the ones that connect all of the dots. That we haven't connected those dots, that those dots have always been connected, but that humanity finds the dots themselves and then rides the lines between them in order to achieve greater things. And so everything necessary for humanity to evolve and transform and become even greater expressions of the divine is absolutely already there and available to us. The prosperity of it all, the support of it all, the nurturement of it all, the love of it all, the community of it all, it's all right there. And that infinite potential, we call it into being right now, knowing that as we call that infinite potential into being, it is done. We are creating it at this moment as we speak this prayer right now. We are contributing to the creation of the goodness that we see as the potential of humanity and the potential for God. And so as we do that, the law does it with us, and together that awareness and knowing manifests and makes itself so as my life and as our lives right here and right now together as a community. I know it is already done, and so it is. Amen.